handouts, I thought there was some better information to give to you. So by a show of hands, so one of the things up here is a lie. So I bought my girlfriend an engagement ring. Nobody? Speaks 3 languages. Never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Which one do you guys think is a lie? Show of finger. 3, 1s, 2s, 1s, 2s, 3s. Well, the answer is 2. I don't know how to speak 3 languages. I actually never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Growing up, I hate to admit this, but I was more of a bologna and ketchup kind of guy. But not the best diet growing up. And yes, I did buy my girlfriend an engagement ring. She actually picked it out, so she is anticipating it. It's just a matter of when. And I've gotten the blessing from her father as well. So a little background on me about that. So I want to quickly give you guys an introduction, what we're going to be using at different points throughout this presentation. These are Eversound headphones. You're going to see this little logo in the bottom left. And the hope is that you can hear me through the headphones, or you're going to hear the audio that's coming through the headphones. And the beauty of that is you can turn it up or turn it down whenever that best sees fit. And I can adjust this. And we're using this in communities around the country. Hello. So what I really want to talk about here is really getting into the social isolation. And this is something that you see keeps getting a lot of attention. And it's amazing when you see the information that's coming out about it. I'm trying to get this mic set up for you guys so you can actually hear me. That's ironic if I can't. All right. So recently, the American Psychological Association said that social isolation will be a greater threat to healthy aging than obesity. Think about that. It's amazing when you're not able to engage or be a part of a community or have that sense of purpose. You really will, excuse me, it just impacts everything that's going on. And another thing that I found amazing was that the AARP states prolonged isolation is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. We've always been taught how important non-smoking is, especially in my generation. And to think about how 15 cigarettes a day can really impact a person's well-being and their social isolation and when they're going about it. And what we find a big reason for that is hearing loss. When you think about it, if you're not able to hear, if you're not able to participate, if you're not able to have a conversation with someone, you tend to fade back and fade further back. And what they say is, when you lose your sight, you lose your way, but when you lose your hearing, you lose your friends. And I think, that still remains true. And when you can't hear, again, you can't participate, you can't interact, you can't engage. And I promise I'll stop playing with this mic here soon enough. So first, I want to share a video with you from Dr. Franklin. He is a doctor at the Johns Hopkins Medicine Institute. He'll share some information when it comes to healthy hearing. And if you want, we can put the headphones on now, and it should come in through it.
Hearing is a remarkable thing. It underlies almost everything we do every single day. Our ability to engage with others, our ability to engage with the world around us. And yet, hearing loss, the loss of our ability to perceive and understand sounds, is incredibly common. We see that about 1 in 12 Americans has a significant hearing impairment, and this grows from about 1 in 1,000 kids being born with a significant hearing impairment. So ultimately, as we age, that nearly two-thirds of all adults over 70 in the United States have a meaningful impairment that interferes with their daily lives. Increasingly in research, we're seeing that hearing impairment, it increases our risk of developing dementia. It increases our risk of developing cognitive decline and loss of thinking and memory abilities over time, and even increase our risk of progressing to disability over time. And a lot of that has to do with just how integral hearing is to the brain. We're understanding that if you can't hear well, there's constantly a load put on your brain, because you're constantly having to spend more energy to process this very, very degraded sound. At the same time, we're understanding that hearing loss may actually have a direct effect in terms of the brain structure, in terms of stability of the brain, how fast the brain shrinks and atrophies over time. The big unknown question, which we're just beginning to focus on now here at Johns Hopkins, is addressing how much of a difference does hearing loss treatment make? Can it actually reduce the risk of cognitive decline? Can it reduce the risk of dementia with time? Those are studies that are ongoing right now. At Johns Hopkins now, for the last 25 years, we've had one of the most comprehensive clinics now for cochlear implantation. Cochlear implantations are remarkable. They are actually a prosthetic device that can restore the sense of sound for many people. And it used to be that cochlear implants were seen as just something for kids who are born deaf. But increasingly now, the vast majority of cochlear implants are actually done in older adults, people in their 60s and 70s who have naturally lost hearing over time. And importantly for these individuals, we're finding that just like children, cochlear implants can make the biggest difference in their lives sometimes by allowing them to re-engage with the world around them as opposed to just being in a corner saying, well, I can't hear, I'm fine. Right? And increasing understanding is not fine anymore. That hearing impairment is something that we do need to take seriously as a society, as a government, and the world essentially in terms of its impact on what we consider to be healthy aging. So in Better Hearing and Speech Month, I urge all of you to take this broader perspective of understanding that hearing loss is just one small component in the grand scheme of health, but understanding that it comes with incredibly cascading consequences for our overall abilities and our daily lives. So I think if any of you have any concerns about your hearing, or particularly loved ones' concerns about hearing, clearly the first step is just assessing it, to get a hearing assessment, a hearing evaluation, to find out whether it's even the case or not. And this is pretty simply done. Hearing tests are almost always covered by insurance, and it's something that can be done quickly in a 15 to 30 minute appointment that can set the stage for understanding what is going on with hearing and say how it's impacting your life.
All right. So Dr. Franklin, he's actually one of our company advisors, and he talks about the importance of hearing, and a lot of the stats and statistics that we'll go through here for the rest of the presentation are from him and his team. So I wanted to quickly introduce him to you. I wish he would come out here, surprisingly, but maybe next time. So I'm sure you can all think of someone a resident, a loved one, a family member, a friend who struggles with hearing loss. And this is a really big problem. There's 18 million people over the age of 70, that have some sort of hearing loss, and there's 5 million over the age of 85 with, that hearing loss as well. And I think we're no strangers to the idea of the silver tsunami and, how the baby boomers are really going to shift and change those numbers over time. Now, what I find the most astonishing when I've been doing more research about hearing loss is that 80% of people over the age of 85 have some sort of hearing loss. That's 4 out of 5 people. You can think of probably your residents, and a lot of them are struggling as well. Come on in. We're all friends. How's it going?
Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
I'm sorry.
Can't be mad. And so 80% of people have some sort of hearing loss, and one of the first things that comes to mind is like, how can we fix that? Is through a hearing aid, right? It's kind of the natural progression, but only 20% of people that could benefit from a hearing aid are actually wearing one, or actually using one. And you might ask yourself, why? Well, some of the reasons that we see is cost. It's very prohibitive. My grandmother, before she passed away last year, struggled with hearing loss. Lived to the beautiful old age of 93, but was never in a position to have hearing aids. Just couldn't drop, $3,000-$4,000 on them in order to use them. We also see, it's ironic as the technology gets better, they get smaller and smaller, but if you're lacking the manual dexterity in your hands, they're difficult to operate. And what we also find is a lot of the time, the responsibility of wearing them falls on the caregiver, and the resident wants to keep taking them out. We also find a lot of time residents just don't want to wear them, or people just don't want to wear them. It's one of those stigmas associated with it, where it's funny because we all wear eyeglasses. Well, not all of us, but a lot of people wear eyeglasses, and that's kind of showing how I struggle to see without it. But a hearing aid is one of those physical indicators where, and I just talked to a gentleman today where he said he didn't want to get one because he didn't want to have to wear it around, and people would look at him and maybe look at him differently. So we see a lot of those reasons as being the main why people aren't wearing hearing aids. But there's such a big hearing loss impact, and what we're finding, hearing loss is impacting cognitive decline, weight loss, negative thoughts, depression, and social isolation. And to get into it, and these are just some things that I found, and it's amazing when you think about the sensory, touch, taste, smell, and I'm talking about a bunch of those in a presentation here tomorrow, but hearing is what really connects us with the world around us. And so here's just some interesting things that I found in the research that we've done where, if someone has mild hearing loss, nearly 3 times more likely to have a history of falling. If someone has normal hearing or moderate hearing loss compared to someone with normal hearing loss, triple the risk to develop dementia. And adults ages 70 years or older with moderate or more severe hearing impairment have a 54 increased risk of all causes of death as compared to older adults with normal hearing and mild impairments. I'm happy to share any of this information afterwards, but I thought this was all just pretty amazing stuff. So what is it like, right? So, we can all think of someone who struggles with it, maybe even some of you struggle with it yourself, but I want to give you an opportunity to really see, what it's like. So we do have this hearing loss simulator, so I ask if you don't have the headphones on, you can put them on, and I always find they help with my ADD, because I always am looking at other stuff, but here we go.
I know I'm young, could be a little bit wiser, but I've had my fair share of love, and I've seen love with grenades and fire and ice to know the cold will suffice. Underestimate me if you can tolerate my opinion. For once in your life. If we all take one step, that's a giant leap for one little girl. But I can't do this on my own, and I don't wanna be alone. Would you take my hand and join me for tea? Some afternoon coffee.
So I figured it'd be better for her to sing rather than me because I didn't want to have to damage you guys beyond recognition here. So, when you're looking at that, asking yourself, like, how does that make you feel when you're not able to participate or hear, the hearing that's going on? And I want you to think and imagine, like, what it would be like in an everyday life when you're doing that. Some of the times we find with our elders is that it happens over such a long period of time that we don't really acknowledge that it's a problem. And what I found interesting was I was at a conference last year and people were struggling to hear the keynote speaker, and these are real people at a real conference, and they had an app to sign in, and people, when they can't hear, they get upset, right? Because you can't hear what's going on around you. And I think there's probably even some people in this room that were at this conference. And some of these things for the people in the back, can text take the echo out of the audio system in Florida room? Hard to understand. Sound quality in the Florida room is horrid. Most looking forward to the 2 speakers today and truly disappointed in the sound system. Understood a portion of Dr. Wells' lecture, but could not understand Dr. Kimona at all. Sad. Can't understand. Too many echoes. And then actually I could only hear 25% of what was said. When we can't hear, when we can't participate, this is something that I think a lot of the time we take for granted. And when we are not able to hear, we're upset. And just think about those residents that are struggling to hear. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but, so what we find with hearing loss, and I even saw this with my own grandmother and see with our other founding team's grandparents, is, how does hearing loss really impact senior living communities? And apart from the things we've mentioned before, we find hearing loss, event attendance and engagement suffer, right? Everyone's investing a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money into these awesome programs. I've seen the calendars, I've been in the communities, I've seen what you guys are doing. They're awesome. You're really engaging the entire person. But what we find is if people can't hear, they can't participate. I hear time and time again, why bother? Why bother going to that? I can't hear, I'm just gonna sit in the back and I'm not gonna be able to participate. I've heard stories, because there's constant communication challenges, and I've heard horror stories from communities where residents are getting kicked out of meetings because they keep asking what is being said. You know, and I see the head shaking out there, and you guys are seeing this. And imagine how that would make you feel, right? Like, you're trying to be a better person. You're trying to go to these things. Come on in. Maybe not. All right. But you're trying to go to these things and being kicked out of that community group, you know, where's the sense of purpose in that? You know, just imagine how that would make you feel if, you know, we were to sit here and really make fun and really talk down on someone just because it's something out of their control. We also see a thing coming out as volume wars, you know, especially in the group environment where people can't understand each other, or they want the volume up and others want the volume down, and they're really struggling to hear or to participate because, and then there's the fighting back and forth, and I've heard times of residents telling another resident to shut up because they kept asking what was being said, and it's just not a good environment. It's not that warm, loving feeling that I know you guys want to give time and time again, and it all comes down to this, you know, the hearing. And then what we find is the frustration among residents and their caregivers and their family members where they are investing in these hearing aids or looking for ways to help these people, and you know, it's just not a good solution for them. And what we also find is, you know, the majority of the time is like my grandmother, you know, she was someone who wouldn't go out to events. Every time I would go visit her, she would just be sitting in her chair with the TV on, blasting. She, you know, wouldn't laugh at the jokes that was being said, wouldn't comprehend what was going on. They would try and bring her to events, but she would just sit there and just not engage. And what they found when they were able to like give her something to help her hear, you know, she could really be a part of the community again. She could engage again. And what we find is, you know, these all come back to like this social isolation, right? Because if you can't hear me now, you're just kind of sitting there, sitting back, you know, not really engaged with what's going on. And we find how hearing loss and social isolation really play, you know, a hand in hand. So what we find with like other problems with hearing, you know, hearing loss is currently untreated in about 80 to 85% of people that have it, right? So we talk about the people with the hearing aids that are seeking that help, but in a lot of people, it's not even, excuse me, it's not even being treated. And it might be, you know, one of the nation's most damaging and costly sensory handicaps. You know, and I've heard stories of individuals that are thought to have been in later stages of dementia, but it's really that they just couldn't hear, you know. And if you think about it, again, you know, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record here, but if you can't hear, you can't engage, you're not really sure what's going on, vision is probably not the best, so you're kind of just sitting there, isolated. And hearing loss, you know, it's more than just about the inability to hear if something is too loud or too soft. It's really about the certain frequencies. And as we get older, you know, the higher frequencies is more difficult to hear. So some of the lower voices are easier to hear, but as we get older, it's more about the frequencies and not necessarily about the volume. So I wanted to play for you guys just this confusion sound. As you're about to hear is from Educate Training Institute as part of their Dementia Live Simulation and Awareness Program. The purpose of this sound is to confuse your brain so you experience challenges of living with dementia. And just kind of give you a sense of what that's like. And we don't actually exactly know what is going on in their brain at any given time, but we do know the brain hears and processes things differently. So this is a 15-minute clip. I promise we won't play that much of it, but I just want to give you a sense of this. And I want you to ask yourself as you're listening to this, like, how do I feel? You know, how does this make me feel? You know, what's my heart doing? What's my mind doing? Is my heart rate increasing? Is my breathing increasing? And we can just take it from there. All right, we don't have to listen to too much more of that, but you get the sense of it. You know, it's not fun. You know, it's just not enjoyable. And I do want to say thank you to the Educate friends that let me play that clip. So, thanks, man. Now, I want to talk with you guys a little bit about the solutions that I see most used, and we'll kind of go through some different things that can be helped, and so hopefully from today you guys will walk away with some actionable and takeaways. So the solutions that I most commonly be seeing used at senior living communities is, the first clip here is yelling. Someone talking in a louder voice. That, if you're on the receiving end or you're hearing that, it's not a good vibe between people, right? It's almost like you're talking down upon someone or talking to a child essentially, and that just doesn't make anyone feel better. The one on the right here is turning up the volume. We're trying to hit it number 11. If any Spinal Tap fans out there, and just trying to turn it up, but that's really not helping the individual. It's just almost making it worse for more people in the group. But I think the majority of the time, I think people just kind of accept it. They just accept hearing loss. It's a natural thing with aging, as with sight, as with touch, as with smell, as with everything else. And it's just one of those things that, oh well, is kind of the motto. But there are real life solutions, and we'll kind of go through a pros and cons list here of each. So hearing aids, we touched on them a little bit here. Pros: individual hearing profile, available in a variety of styles and configurations, prescribed by professional audiologists. I would definitely recommend, if you're going to get a hearing aid, is go to an audiologist, compared to some of the times you'll find like a hearing aid dispenser where they're incentivized to sell the most expensive hearing aid. I don't want to knock the profession or anything, because what they're doing is important, but that's just part of the job. So some of the cons that I've seen with hearing aids, $4,000 for an effective pair, and if you lose those or break those, that's more money coming out of the pocket. And I hear stories of people washing them, throwing them out, especially like those residents living with dementia. It can be troublesome. The thing with hearing aids too is the ambient noise leads to poor quality sound. So if, let's say, if you're in a group environment and the phones are ringing or the door is opening, all those sounds are competing with one another. The stigma decreases usage and adoption rates, something we touched on before. Users lack dexterity for smaller controls. So, even I struggle to put things into my ears, even like the earbuds, and it just, if you have to adjust anything on it, it makes it more difficult. Prescribed by a professional, and I say that, for the hearing aid distributors out there, even though it's great, but again, they're incentivized to sell the most expensive pair. And the responsibility for battery changes and wearing typically falls on the caregiver. And I know the caregiver usually has a million things to do, and this might become an oversight at times. So one of the things that Dr. Lin touched on was cochlear implants. So the pros: definitely increases level of hearing, makes it easier to communicate. Cons: requires surgery. Still that ambient noise leads to poor quality sound. User needs extensive training to perceive and comprehend the sounds more effectively. And it's typically used for the deaf or harder hearing at a younger age. Pocket talkers. So they're relatively inexpensive. I'm sure you guys have all seen these or heard of these. There's personalized audio control. It's very easy to use. It's portable. Cons: there's still a cord involved. It contains a cord from the amplifier to the headphone. Picks up background noises unless talking directly in the microphone. There's a 20 to 4 decibel acoustic gain, and it's ideal for people with mild to moderate hearing loss. And it also has batteries, so you need to change those over time. Loop system. So this is one of the more popular things that I see being installed into communities, especially in large theaters or chapels or churches, places of worship. So there's definitely some pros. So it has the ability to block environmental noise and improve signal to noise ratio. There's reduced risk of acoustic feedback, ease of use, and it is ADA compliant. So if you are inviting people from the community in, it helps those. So the cons, this requires installation of a fixed loop within an area. I find it easier to be built into a new building, believe it or not. No, you should know that. It can be costly depending on the size of the room, and the user requires a T-coiled enabled hearing aid. So basically the idea with that is, so only 20% of people wear hearing aids, and even a smaller percentage of that are actually T-coil enabled. So the way that it would work, I would have to have the T-coil enabled on my hearing aid, walk into a room that has the loop system, and I would be able to magnetically connect to that and hear the sound. some of the other issues that I've heard from other communities that have used it is that it's not designed for music. It's better for the voice. Other digital devices can interfere with the signal. The telecoil orientation is important to the quality of signal and sound, so you would have to be right on top of it in order to get the highest level of audio compared to if you're sitting outside of it or not even in the room itself. And it's typically confined to one room. Also, something that we're using here today, the mic and speaker. So the prices range from relatively inexpensive to expensive professional AV systems. There's a solution for an entire room. It's usually portable. The nice thing with this, you can move it from room to room, and it's still giving some pretty good volume to it. Cons, again, it encourages those volume wars. Sitting closer to the speaker makes it louder. Further away, you might suffer. It's not a solution for individual hearing profiles. You need proper microphone etiquette in order for it to work properly, and that's something we see happening in communities as well. So, I want to talk about some healthy hearing practices, and I sat in a talk a couple years ago from Kathy Richards, which is the Director of Lifestyle and Wellness for Asbury Methodist Village down in Maryland, and what they do within their community really inspired me to try and share what they've been doing. So they're really trying to defeat the stigma. That's what they struggle with the most when it comes to hearing loss and with hearing aid adoption. So they've actually created a resident task force. When someone moves in, this task force will go meet with that person and advise them if they have hearing, if they have any hearing issues, and making them feel accepted because of it. Also, this task force appears in, they do these little TV commercials. They're a large life plan community, and so they actually have their own resident studio, and they actually do videos. I wish I had one to share with you today, perhaps next time. But they actually have videos showing people that have hearing loss and kind of the stories that go around that to really help defeat that stigma. They're speaking to the dining staff and also training leadership meetings. I don't know where that came from, but all right, that was strange. iTunes decided to work, but at least it was a good song. Good thing it wasn't my workout playlist, let's just say that. All right, so yeah, they speak and they train the dining staff and other leadership in other departments to talk about the right way to talk to someone, which is in a slower, a little bit louder voice, and make sure you're making eye contact with that person, because a lot of times people are reading lips. Another thing that they do is they write newsletter articles almost every month, whether it's about new information that's coming out about hearing loss, or just how many people actually are living with it. And they also have educational materials in print. So they actually, if you walk into their mailroom, they have these little documents that show about the healthy hearing practices and how they're really trying to address it at their own community. Now, I want to introduce quickly Eversound to you. This is not going to take the whole hour, so you guys will have some time in between to go, do what you want. But Eversound, we're really trying to defeat social isolation, and we're doing that through wireless headphones that you're currently wearing. And I want to just show you a quick clip. This is Mama Bella. She just celebrated her 96th birthday. She's actually one of my co-founders' grandmothers, and she lives at home with her daughter, which is his mom. And she struggles with hearing loss, and she is living at home with dementia. And they find a lot of the time that she can't participate. They tried hearing aids, it just wasn't a fit for her. But this is her with my other co-founder, Jake, and they're trying the Eversound system that you're currently wearing.
He's sitting on your shoulder. Well, that was exciting right there. Okay, that's okay. That's okay, Mommy. These will be fine. These will be fine. This is good.
How's that? You hear my voice pretty well? Is it clear?
Honey, there.
Here, why don't you talk to me?
Okay. Well, there was such a... Yeah.
So And Mama Bella, she actually uses this on a daily basis, and I've seen more videos of her where she's watching television and able to laugh with the jokes. You know, her daughter is able to talk to her and not have to yell at her again. So it's just the little moments like that, you know, we're so excited as a company to help people hear again and really defeat that social isolation that's coming out of it. You know, just a quick little thing about Eversound. So it's been proven to improve engagement, improve resident attendance, improve that the number of people falling asleep or leaving, you know, out of frustration. And we recently rolled out the Silverado in the memory care side of things. We're seeing some transformational results. And I want to do a quick plug for, before that, well, we're going to do the plug and then we're going to go back to that. But today, we're doing a silent disco later today. And this is from LeadingAge in New Orleans from last year. There might be some familiar faces in there. And this is what you can expect. So an absolute riot. People had a blast with it. We're going to be doing that at the opening ceremony here today too, and actually giving away a $500 grand prize to the dance competition winner. And I just have to say you guys are lucky that I can't compete because I've got some moves, I'm not going to lie. But it's funny how we're doing these silent discos at these conferences, and I'm always a fan of more dance parties at conferences just because I think we're all fun people in our hearts and we want to have a good time. But this still remains true as we get older that we're starting to see silent discos happening in senior living communities. So no music, and she's got some serious moves. And you know, I just want to leave you guys, and I know I'm not going to go the whole hour here, and I definitely want to give you guys the opportunity to go take a nap or meditate or whatever you best see fit. But together we can really do this. You know, together we can really defeat this stigma. It's an okay thing to have hearing loss. And something I want to say to you guys, there's usually a 7-year delay by the time you really start experiencing hearing loss to where you actually are seeking a solution. You know, that's a long period of time, right? So together we can do this. We can really help those residents that are struggling to hear and bring them back out to more activities and more events and make them feel a part of their community again and really focus on those 6 dimensions of wellness, because hearing loss is impacting every one of those. So I want to leave it at that. If you guys want to chat, I'm here, or we have a booth at 314, but I appreciate you guys' time here today, and I hope that you guys hear more about this later. Questions? Yes, that's important.
I just wanted to say that I started wearing double hearing aids about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And it hasn't been difficult at all.
Awesome, good. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're very expensive though.
Yeah, oh yeah.
$200 a piece.
Okay. Yeah.
With
Yes.
Mama Bella, is that her name?
Yep, Mama Bella.
How, because I was thinking this would be good for my dad, but like how do they watch TV and like transfer it over to his daughter? Like how does it work?
Yeah, great question. So the way that works, we have this small transmitter here. Right now this is plugged into the audio. And just turn off. All right, I guess I'm just gonna have to yell at you guys. There we go. So the way that it works, whatever's plugged into here will then be broadcasted to all the headphones. So they just plug the TV into here, and then there's a microphone here. So we have like a small mic that someone could put on it. Right now the system that we have is for groups, but we have some beta individual systems out there for the at-home use for more of the consumer side.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions, comments, concerns? Hope you guys learned something new. Cool, well, I won't keep you guys any longer than I have to. It looks like you got about 15 minutes to kill, so we'll be at the Silent Disco. We do have limited drink tickets, but come find us and